So let's start a journey in the main theme of this evening. And I'm very glad that Dr. Mupen has already enlightened us a lot. So I think you can still practice, sir. What is this? You know about this, the handgun. Every day we keep reading about it. And there's a lot of fuss, a lot of debate in US. There are shootings inside the mall, there are shootings outside the mall. There's a lot of debate whether the licenses should be allowed or not allowed. So we are all scared of handguns. They kill a lot of people. But we forget one thing. The cardiovascular diseases kill more people in one day than handguns kill in a year. So if we are so much concerned about the handgun, then we should be 365 times more concerned about the cardiovascular diseases. And one of the important things is that our duties as physicians is to educate the masses not to take medicine. This is our duty as physicians. We are not meant to give medicine, we are meant to prevent disease primarily, and then secondarily to give medicines. When we talk of prevention from heart attacks, there is a multi-level prevention. First of all, we should prevent somebody from the first heart attack. We should prevent the heart attack itself. And then comes, if somebody actually suffers heart attack, we have to prevent the death and we have to prevent the long-term damage from the heart attack. And once somebody has already suffered, then we also have to prevent another heart attack. So there are three levels of protection when we talk of heart attack. In today's talk, I'm confining myself to part B, that how to prevent deaths and damages from heart attacks, what best we can do that. And obviously, there can be a full-fledged lecture on how to prevent heart attacks, as well as there can be a full-fledged another lecture on how to prevent subsequent heart attacks. As we know, cardiovascular diseases, these are number one killer. So what do we mean by cardiovascular disease in a simpler form? These are diseases of heart and the blood vessels, most common being the heart attacks and strokes, peripheral or limb arterial diseases, and other heart diseases. And in most often, and the most common denominator is the cholesterol deposition in all of them. 17.9 million people die every year from cardiovascular disease as from the WHO data. You can imagine that's a very huge number, more than the population of many countries which just die from the heart diseases, which is approximately 31% of all global deaths. And there's a little bit of data. It is not boring because you will understand the magnitude of the problem if you go through a little bit of this data, that according to World Health Organization, more people die of heart diseases, mainly heart attacks, yearly than any other cause, part one. In 2004, 17.4 million died, and which is expected to be 23.6 million by 2030. Although the incidence of acute myocardial infarction and heart attacks is declining in the West, it is still very high in our part of the world, as Sir already mentioned. And in US, average one death occurs every 40 seconds because of heart attacks. Can you imagine that? And cardiovascular diseases claim more lives each year than all forms of cancer and lung diseases combined. So let us think of this. We are scared of cancer, yes. We should treat cancers, yes. But we can make a significant contribution in saving lives if in the same ratio and same proportion we increase and exalt our efforts in saving the heart attacks and saving the lives from the heart attacks. We have seen and we have noted that there are significant patient delays when they present to the hospital. Even in US, even now, it is 1.5 to 2 hours, and only 60% patients use the ambulance. These are all US data. So just revert it. In our part of the world, the EMS transport is less than 10% or 15%. So there is a need for patient education for recognizing warning symptoms and seeking emergency medical services due to risk of impending cardiac arrest when somebody suffers from a heart attack. This is the data from our part of the world. It's very interesting. All Middle East countries have the death rates from cardiovascular diseases double, or rather more than double, than the UK, USA, and Germany. And this is also data from World Health Organization. So can you imagine that we are sitting on a volcano? Our death rates are more than double than the West. A DHA study from 2015 clearly showed that this is approximately contributing to 30 to 35%. And also, HAD, which is the Health Authority of Abu Dhabi, also showed that the deaths from cardiovascular diseases range from 35 to 40%. So they came out that it is the number one cause of mortality. And in 2011, 37.5% of total deaths occurred because of heart diseases and related diseases. And without intervention, means without taking appropriate measures, there is a 25% prediction of increase in mortality from heart diseases by now already. What do we see differently in our Gulf countries, including UAE? This is based on 2 large trials which were done. Our patients are relatively at much younger age as compared to the Western world. We have high rates of metabolic syndrome, the obesity and low good cholesterol, high triglycerides, high blood pressure, insulin resistance, already been mentioned. Our patients present very late. Can you imagine our patient present until 48 to 72 hours late? Fortunately, they survived. Those who don't survive, we don't know about them. The acute management is generally not adequate even now. There is a still high rate of long-term mortality. You treat the patient well. Even then, this particular patient in our part of the world carries a much higher mortality in the future. We have a very low utilization of emergency medical services. Very often we see that patients drive themselves to the hospital, or they seek the support of his wife or spouse or friend to drive them down to the hospital. So our use of ambulance is quite low. So then this caption is taken directly from the studies from Gulf that there is a need for public education. The crux of the problem is nearly half of all events occur in patients who look apparently healthy, like you and me. And we have seen upteenth time, you may have heard in the newspaper, somebody was giving a talk, somebody was doing a concert, and he suddenly collapsed and died. So apparently healthy people can also suffer. And about 40% of heart attack patients die, and half of them die before they reach to the hospital. So basically what we see in the hospital, the patients who arrive in our hospital, there is already a significant proportion of people who could not reach. We don't know about them. They died before they could contact the institution. And we don't have such surveillance where we can go back and retrieve back and find out that which patient died of heart attack, and we don't do autopsy here, we don't have postmortem here. So we do not know. Many people die before we know. Some people might wonder that what is heart attack? So in a simplified version by this cartoon, heart is a muscle. It is supplied by blood through the arteries and tubules like this. And heart attack is when there is sudden abrupt closure of one of the tubes of the heart and completely disconnecting the blood supply. And that portion of the heart gets damaged. That's prone to death to the muscle, as well as it leads to arrest of the pump or leading to some fast arrhythmias, what we call them as chaotic movement of the heart not supplying enough blood. Cholesterol deposition is, as I said in the beginning, is the main denominator. You can see this is a tube which is cut open, which is normal. There is no cholesterol here. While here you will see some deposition of cholesterol. Here you will see increasing deposition of cholesterol. A healthy artery from inside looks like this, very smooth and clean, while a damaged artery, which is lipid laden, what we call cholesterol laden, looks like this. So what happens when somebody suffers from heart attack? What is the physiology of this? There is a deposition of cholesterol like this in the blue. We call it plaque formation. And this is the artery. One fine day, with some trigger, this gives way and it ruptures like a volcano and it creates a clot here and completely blocks the artery. This is acute heart attack. So cholesterol deposition ruptures like a volcano and clogs the artery with a thrombus or clot. So what we need to do? First step is prevent heart attack. Prevent the plaque formation. Don't allow the cholesterol to get deposited. Second is prevent plaque disruption. Prevent the rupture of this deposited cholesterol and convert into a heart attack. And third, if already suffered a heart attack, then open the blocked artery as fast as you can. This is what is needed. The common heart attack warning signs are most common is the chest pain, and then there could be sweating, jaw pains. In general, remember that, which we also teach to the medical students, the pain below the umbilicus, below the belly button, and pain above the jaw is not from heart. So don't worry about it, as long as you have pain outside those regions. But anywhere in this region and on the left arm, you can have chest pain, which can be indicative of heart attack. So you need to worry about it. Sometimes heart attack presents in very different, varied ways, like nausea, vomiting, dizziness, sweating only. So all these are the additional symptoms, but the most common one is chest pain. Though the story is slightly different in women, because you know women always are different than men. So in women, it was shown that only 45% times they have actual chest pain, but they can have very different kinds of presentations, which could be like unusual upper body discomfort, shortness of breath, breaking out in cold sweats, unusual or unexplained fatigue, lightheadedness, nausea, and so on and so forth. So don't get befooled that if somebody doesn't have chest pain, so cannot have heart attack. And also, there is a common notion, even now, not among the public, even among the physicians, that heart attack is a disease of men, which is absolutely wrong. The cardiovascular disease is by far the biggest killer for women. And roughly, you can imagine that more number of women die of heart attacks than the men. And approximately 5 times deaths in women is from heart attack than with the breast cancer. So idea is to draw your attention that although it is very important to take care of the breast cancer, but remember that the cardiovascular diseases women are 5 times more killer as compared to breast cancer. So women are different. They are roughly 10 years older than men when they present and have more comorbidities. Young women can also present with heart attacks and they have further worse prognosis than men. And women presentation is even later. And this is the story also in the West, not in our part of the world. The symptoms are being ignored, the care is being ignored, and the care is being delayed, and this leads to more and more mortalities in the women. So once somebody suffers from heart attack, time is life. The clock is ticking. The blocked artery should be opened as fast as possible. As fast means really as fast. In 1 minute, in 5 minutes, in 10 minutes, in 20 minutes, in 1 hour, do your best. Do your best to open the fast. Because what's the danger? There is an immediate danger that acute heart attack can lead to sudden cardiac arrest, and which is the most common cause of death. And why it happens? Because heart muscle quivers and not able to pump blood. That is the time when somebody needs a resuscitation, what we call cardiopulmonary resuscitation, CPR. And at that time, a shock is needed, which can save the life immediately. So this is CPR. You might have seen this. If somebody is getting arrested, the CPR can work wonders. It can revive the patient very soon. As well as there are shocking devices. On the left, you will see AED. These are known as automatic external defibrillators. Now they are present in, they have been put all around the world in all major public places, including the airports, the big malls, and they are becoming mandatory in a way because they can save the life immediately. If for somebody collapses, this machine is put on, it will automatically detect whether the person will be benefited by shock or not. And if yes, then machine will deliver the shock also. So this is a life-saving device. And one shock can make the person as good for the rest of his life as anybody else. So a small thing can make a very big change in the entire life history of a person. A person who is dying in next 2 minutes can be made to survive for another 40 years. And this is the magic. So we need to remember this magic. That here we are dealing with a situation and here we are dealing with a condition where we can really make a big difference by knowledge. And that knowledge is not confined to healthcare professionals. That knowledge should also be with the community. So with all of you who are non-medicals here, 50% of you are non-medicals here today, and this knowledge should be properly given to you. And that is the main idea of all this seminar and conference. So when I said that open the clogged artery and clog tube as soon as possible, until 20 years before, we were only having a clot busting medication, which we used to give immediately, which was a blood thinning medication. Subsequently, in early 2000, a therapy was established, which is to open the clogged artery by the catheter and make the person completely normal. In my tenure of last 15 years, I have had the privilege given by God that as many as 200, we call it primary angioplasties, the angioplasty in the patient who is suffering from a heart attack. And it is so rewarding, and I have got this privilege, so rewarding, that somebody is dying in front of you or somebody is suffering from severe chest pain, somebody going to die and may die later on. And in your 15 minutes job, you can open an artery, you can establish the flow. And next day, patient is walking. And then you keep seeing the patient another 20 years. I have people whom I have treated 15 years before, 16 years before. They were as good as anybody else. So that's the magic. And that's the advantage of knowledge in treatment of the heart attacks. Like this patient, for example, this patient, young Asian, 46 years old male, presented with severe chest pain, came to the emergency room. ECG clearly showed a heart attack. And when we took him to the cath lab, this was a completely occluded tube. Now you can't see anything below because it is occluded, it is blocked. And believe me and trust me, it took me not more than 10 minutes to reach to this stage, from here to here. And we made a big difference. The pain is gone, the ECG is improved, patient is walking next day, and third day patient is out of the hospital. So this is what healthcare professionals do. But what you have to do as a non-healthcare professional is to recognize, to understand, to present fast, and to present through the ambulance. So when we say chain of survival for heart attacks, the chain cannot be broken. The part of the chain is starting from the patient. Then patient should be transported through the ambulance. The ambulance should take the patient appropriately to the emergency, and the emergency doctor should appropriately send the patient to us, the cardiologist, for the next appropriate action. So my role starts here, but I have no control on these three things. So I can write the heroics about my working in this part, but what can I do for that? This is what I'm doing for this. This part I know very well how to do, but this part I need to teach everybody. I need to teach the people, I need to teach the ER people, healthcare professionals, the nurses, I need to teach the emergency care doctors, not to waste a single minute. This is what I need to teach. Because here, once the patient comes to me, I know what to do. But by that time, many times it is too late. And in this system of care, there are multiple stakeholders. There is a patient, and then there is the role of emergency medical services. Then there is a role of the STEMI, the heart care receiving center like us, cardiology centers. But then also there is a role of payer, and there's a role of policymaker. We have a clear policy in our hospital. If somebody comes with a heart attack, we treat him irrespective of the financial status. In fact, it happened in November 1st week. We got a patient who was arrested, a worker brought by the ambulance to our hospital. We did primary angioplasty. We did not charge a single penny. This is the kind of comfort we have because we know that we can make a difference. So in this particular situation, we never ever ask the patient, what is your insurance? We never wait for the insurance approval. We don't ask the patients or the standbys to deposit money, nothing. We do not waste a single minute. We treat the patient, payment fine, no payment fine. This is the policy in our hospital, and we are proud of this. Yes. Thank you. So, how can we contribute and how do we contribute? We do many things. Like we made a website, we propagate the ideas through the electronic media. We keep on writing in newspapers, magazines, and handouts. You can see in the website, there are several links, which I'll show you subsequently. We do lectures and seminars like we are doing now. We do awareness camps. We also do the radio shows and TV shows. In many different ways, we utilize all the available media to inculcate and to propagate the knowledge in the society. Because I believe the society also needs to be educated, not just the healthcare professionals. This is the website, shekhar.com. There's several links of my so many articles which I have published in last 5 years. And many of them are very useful. The most recent one was on the young Asian, deaths in young Asians because of heart attacks. That was in the Gulf News. So these are all the various links which I can always provide you later, but all these are through the website also. We have done several other education programs in many different ways. So I believe that education is the key. And not just a treatment, not just a technical knowledge. I have the technical knowledge, but what can I do with my technical knowledge if I'm not getting the patients at the right time in the right way? So we need to educate. And we need to educate the educators first. Who are our educators? Our educators are physicians. Our educators are nurses. Our educators are paramedics. They must be educated well. They should know what to do at what stage. And then the second part of the education is we need to educate the masses. We need to educate the community. Education is the key. So out of all this gloomy picture, what is the good news? The good news is we are fortunate, cardiologists. We can make a big difference. Unlike some of our colleagues whose hands are tied, they cannot make a big difference like cancer patients. It's really very troublesome that even the best physicians in the oncology department cannot help their patients much. But here we are different. We can make a major difference. To a great extent, we can prevent the first heart attack, to a great extent, believe me. And if somebody suffers, we can prevent deaths from the heart attacks. These are also preventable to a large extent. And if somebody has already suffered, we can prevent the subsequent heart attacks. In fact, I tell many times that if somebody suffers second time, either it is a great fault of the physician who is treating, or is it a great fault by the patient who is not taking enough medication and not doing enough to prevent a second heart attack. Because with the right actions and right medications and right advice from the cardiologist, I can bet you that second heart attacks are very, very much preventable. So at least if somebody suffers once, it is our sovereign duty that don't let it happen again. This is our duty. So that is a good news. So obviously, everything has certain barriers. The barriers are resources, the financial resources, or the trained personnel cannot keep a big battery of so many personnels. That costs a lot. Then knowledge and awareness, which is a barrier, healthcare professionals and public. And still, even in our part of the world and city, we do not have very integrated network. We do not have organized network. And the policymakers do not have it as a priority. Why can't insurance companies declare that irrespective of whatever insurance covered in whichever hospital, if somebody comes from a heart attack, we will cover. This should happen. They should not say, your insurance doesn't cover in Medicare, you are suffering from a heart attack, go elsewhere. This should not happen. So this is not what we can decide. This is what the policymakers have to decide. We have several advantages being in Dubai. Sir already mentioned. We have a wonderful system of ambulances. We have very good infrastructure of roads, communication, and transport. We have cardiac departments which are now spread all across the city, every corner of the city. And maximum distance in the city is 1 hour. And to the nearest heart facility, less than 30 minutes. I had presented one concept in a large international meeting, which was well applauded, but never been implemented. We have hospitals. We have cardiology departments in the hospital. We also have many times the proper cardiology departments or cardiac centers, we can say, standalone. In the entire world, we do not have a heart attack center. Why can't we have one heart attack center in the city where anybody thinks I am suffering from a heart attack, straight away rushes to that heart attack center and get treated for the heart attack? Because time is muscle, time is ticking. We do not have a heart attack center anywhere in the world, to my knowledge. There may be, I'm not sure, but at least not in India, not here. So something which can save lives. There is hardly any impact of treating somebody who is not having a heart attack and doing an angioplasty. It doesn't make a big difference. But if somebody is suffering a heart attack, you open the artery within 1 hour, as fast as possible, you are making a big difference. So we have advantage in Dubai, but still we have to go a long way. We do not have an integrated, organized network. We have very efficient ambulance services. And we have an effective organization in the form of DHA. At least there is some quality control. So, ladies and gentlemen, take the road to a healthy heart. It goes a long way. And here I am for you to present some of my concepts. Thank you so much.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kamal. Thank you, Dr. Brijesh, and thank you, Dr. Mopin. Very, very informative for all of us that we can share with our society. The question is very quickly on the typical, when you look at the blood report on annual basis, is that triglyceride is the most important factor that we should be looking at, or the total cholesterol as a factor?
Well, total cholesterols in our population are irrelevant because total cholesterol is also made up of good cholesterol, which is frequently low in our part. So as for me personally, I never ever look for the total cholesterol. The most important target is always LDL, the bad cholesterol. This is the most important target. And the second most important one is the triglyceride. Though triglycerides are not the priority target. The priority target is always LDL, the bad cholesterol.
Just a very follow-up, very quickly question. I have read the great cholesterol myth. And the idea about that was there is a composition within the cholesterol, which is good cholesterol may have a bad cholesterol and bad cholesterol may have a good cholesterol, which is basically particle size test. That is, I could not find it with my doctor. So is that something irrelevant?
So we are talking here of exceptions and abnormal things rather than the common things. And I always believe that don't confuse yourself. Go by the common thing. The common thing is check your LDL. If it is high, treat it. This is the common thing. Now, if you want to go into detail that how much is my LDL low and how much is LDL high density or low density, you are only going to confuse yourself. We are going to get advantage only in 5% times. 95% times we are still okay if we just do the LDL. So don't confuse yourself. Be always on the common side. Walk the road which is more common. You are more likely to be successful. If you delaying around the main street, you are going to get lost more often. Don't get lost. Be very specific. Just check LDL and fine, it's okay. And just check LDL, HDL and fine. In certain situation, if your cardiologist thinks that we should do the particle testing, he will do it. But in general, this is fine. This is okay. Mr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Dr. Brijesh. Lovely talk and very informative. My question is in terms of prevention of first heart attack.
Yes.
Healthy lifestyle in terms of exercising and the right food intake, timely food intake. Do these things play a role, or if it has to happen, it will happen?
Sir, absolutely, because I showed in the beginning that there are 3 components of prevention. And today I took the step 2 prevention only. I did not go for step 1 prevention. It is beyond doubt. And I'm glad that you are one of the audience when I presented this saving first heart attack in IBPC forum 5 years before. And that was all about it. So clearly, there is a decline in coronary artery disease, which I showed you data from US, that in last 3 decades in USA, there is a clear decline in coronary artery disease, clear decline in the heart attacks. Why? Because there are more prevention aspects on the board. That is why. We are not doing enough prevention, that is why we are suffering still more. So there is a clear role. Yes, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brajesh. Excellent presentation on a subject which is very close to our heart and should be close to everybody's heart. Doc, how does one recognize? Sometimes, one would see chest pain, arm pain, shoulder pain, but when you rush to the hospital, do an ECG, it's acidity attack or gas. So how does one differentiate between a gastric
Okay.
and a real heart attack?
So
Thank you.
recognition lies with us. You do your part. If you suspect, you come to the hospital. We will tell you whether it is a heart attack or not. Because many times when you think it is acidity, it is actually a heart attack. So it is vice versa. It can be either way. So if you think and if you suspect that I'm not well, I may be suffering from a heart attack, go to the hospital. Let us do our job. We will tell you, okay, it is not. Go home after 2 hours. Everything is fine. But at the same catch, we might get somebody like you having the similar symptom like you, but was actually having heart attack. Thank you. Yes, please.
Yeah. Good evening, Dr. Saab.
Good
It
evening,
was
sir. Yes.
a very useful presentation. Prevention, I think, is the need of the day. One of the relevant point there is that, do you recommend people carrying in their pockets medicines like sorbitrate or equivalent, which in such situations when attacks arise, maybe those who have to have second chance, that can save lives for yourself, or if you are sitting with somebody, like I had that experience, where I offered that and it helped him till ambulance came and it took him to the hospital. So as a general prevention initiative, is that a recommended thing for everybody?
Well, there are many specifics which could be done. We cannot treat the masses. We can only prevent the things in the masses. Whenever we as healthcare professional talk, we give you tips of all the non-medical methods to prevent. But medication should not be used for primary prevention. Medication should not be used for prevention for everybody. Then we'll be doing on the wrong side. We might prevent one, but another 99 are going waste. So we always give and suggest nitroglycerin to somebody who has suffered, and we ask them to keep with them. But not to somebody who has not yet suffered and no chance, then we are just wasting our resources. For one odd patient who will never happen to him. So we'll be very restricted in our policies and methodology. All healthy lifestyle changes must be implemented because these are not medications. But not all medication should be given to everybody.
Dr. Brajesh Mittal,
Yes, sir.
I must say it is a very well-structured presentation. I have a question.
Thank you, sir.
That is, as the gentleman said about chest pains could be due to acidity or a heart attack. But if it is due to heart attack, is the chest pain accompanied by sweating profusely? Human being usually sweats a lot or he may not sweat at all.
So
I just want to know.
Yes. One of the difficulties in medical sciences is it is not mathematical. It is not always 2 + 2 is equal to 4. It is not always the same patient present in the same way for the same condition. Somebody may present classically with chest pain. Somebody may present chest pain and heart attack with sweating. Somebody may present chest pain without sweating and still heart attack. And also, there are many times patients do have heart attacks, which we call as silent. This silent heart attack is almost 10% and 15%. For some odd reason, patient comes to us after, say, 1 month or 2 months. And when we do the ECG, we find that he has already suffered a heart attack. Maybe remotely, maybe 1 month before, maybe 6 months before. So this is a complex science. This is a very complex science. So we cannot say that it cannot be or it can be. We only just go by the law of averages, that what is the most common and how can you do in the most common situation, rather than going into the very specific situations. Dr. Imad.
Yeah, thank you, Mittal, for this lovely lecture and presentation.
Thank you.
My question is, we know that the leader cause of death is cardiovascular. And then the second, it's coming the cancer. Now, me as a gastroenterologist, to prevent cancer, for example, persons who reach up to 50, we start investigating to prevent cancer and to catch it on time and to prevent the cancer or the complication of the cancer. My question is, if the leading cause of the death is cardiovascular, why not at certain age to suspect a patient or any person to go and to investigate for a cardiovascular? And if you suspect something like what we are doing, colonoscopy for a patient, to do angiogram. And what's the complication of angiogram? Not to do it and to be very selective. I would like to understand that.
I got your point. So you are talking of screening. We call it screening. First of all, screening has a very hard rules because you cannot screen masses for something which could be 5% or 10%. And same applies to cancers. There's been a lot of debate that how much screening should be done. And finally, we got to a conclusion that those patients, those people who have a clear family history or some genetic variation should only be screened. Not everybody should be screened. The same thing applies to cardiovascular disease. The good part with us is that our screening is very simple. You check blood pressure, you check sugar, you check cholesterol, you check weight, and your screening is done. It is so simple. And if you have any variation in that, you don't need to prove whether you have a heart attack or not, or we only need to control the risk factors. If you control the risk factor, you are preventing the heart attack. This is as simple as that, right? So our screening is very simple. Every day this is what we do. And nowadays, primarily, I'm more of a preventive cardiologist than an interventional cardiologist because what we do, we just check the blood pressure, cholesterol, sugar, and weight and advise the people accordingly. And this is how we prevent. So this is screening. This is what we do every day. But there is no indication of doing angiography for somebody if he has no risk factor and he has no symptoms and no angina not suffered. This is not indicated. This is not part of the screening. Clear? Yes, please, Dr. Selvin.
Thank you, Dr. Mittal. Wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
My question is simple. I commonly encounter this in my clinical practice.
Yes.
So my patients keep asking me, at what age should they start screening their cholesterol and start taking preventive measures?
It depends. I told one patient today to screen for his son at 10 years of age. Now you'd ask me why. Because this patient has primary hypercholesterolemia. His LDL was more than 300. So it depends whom you are treating to. In general, we say that all adults above 20 years, this is the AHA guideline now, all people above 20 years should have at least one time complete check of total cholesterol. This is from ACC and AHA, American College of Cardiology and American Heart Association guideline. What we say that it is very easy to check blood pressure, sugar, and cholesterol. You can start at any age, but all adults must be screened at least once, if everything fine, then yearly, or 3 yearly, or 5 yearly. So you are never wrong if you check any adult for these simple parameters. You are never wrong. You can do it any time. You are wrong only when you send them for CT coronary angiography, from nuclear test, for angiography, that is wrong. But checking these is fine in any adult. So here, I think we have to stop. It is 9:30, and generally this is, okay. Last one, very last.
I'm actually, I'm coming from engineering background. And with doctor also, I'm connected through one doctor from Gangaram. But I was looking more at the logistic part, actually. Because I'm connected with a lot of startups also from my college and on LinkedIn. Like, I got really huge network. Now, what I was thinking on this logistic part, because a lot of startups are working on the, like a trickle, when there is a problem, like even recently, the Dubai police also, they are triggering all the cars by 21, that if accident happen, that immediately action or information can reach to the nearest police station. So what I was thinking, like Dr. Mupan is also there, if there are some startups going in this field which are helping the logistic part, means the ambulance part and the triggering part. So your work will become easy. So what I'm thinking on these three parts, like awareness, social awareness, and second is the ambulance part, and third is the logistic part, to make this information so that immediately. So are you open for if some startups, because I'm related with a lot of techno-medical startups also, like you can mentor or any support, like,
Yes. Okay, I got your point.
Yeah.
So I'll answer to this. And this is the very last discussion for this evening. In most of the Western world, there are clear apps like Pizza Hut apps. So if somebody suffers a heart attack, suspects, he will go through that app. The app will direct where you are, what is your location, which is the nearest hospital, how to call the ambulance through that same app, and the ambulance takes him directly to that one. So we can have the similar thing here. This is very much possible. What I request all of you to come forward, this is very hard for me to do it all alone, number one. it is very hard for me financially also to arrange such a kind of meeting because it costs a lot of money. And it is very hard for me to take this website and all the efforts single-handedly. So I welcome you all to help me and support me by giving different ideas and be a partner in this whole program. And certainly your ideas will be very welcome then, and we can certainly implement them in a very different way. We can learn from the models from the Western world, what they are doing at the moment. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a good journey for last 1.5 hours. I sincerely thank all my patron who is sitting here and all the partners from the industry. There are many of them who have come forward, our supporters, and my wife and my son. Many weeks I have spent in this particular activity. Last 6 weeks I am working every weekend because I don't get time during the working days. So every weekend I am sacrificing and they are sacrificing for me. So thank you so much for supporting me in this cause. And there are so many faces behind, and they know how tough I am and tough taskmaster, but they all tolerate me well. There is one Miss Apple from EMS, Miss Shalini. You deserve a good applause. You helped me a lot. Our website person, Mr. Junaid. So whether he's in India, he's sitting there. Whether he's in India or he's in Dubai, he keeps traveling. But I always keep bothering him every hour. I send him a message and I'm a tough taskmaster. Somehow he has learned to deal with me, but it's difficult, usually. Meridian staff has been always very cordial to me. They have always supported me in whatever I do. And that is why this is my favorite venue. So I thank them also. And not the least, all of you who believed in me. It is very important that you believed in me. That is why you are spending your 2 hours here in this hall, leaving behind your families and work and other entertainment, which is very much possible beyond this room. So thank you so much, everybody. And I welcome you all for the dinner. Please join us. Thank you.